we started off with these. These are all bags that showcase African heritage, and they give a positive message. So we have been doing different designs with our women and youth. We keep adapting based on the feedback that we get. But now we're very close to what people love. So you see, for example, you have Africa there, and you have our name here. Wow. All of them have a zipper, and they have a lining, because that was part of the feedback. People wanted it to go. And then some people say, but what about when you come to visit? Welcome to Uganda. So they have different messaging. Wow. But look at the level of design. So the level of design and the finishing, we discussed and worked on it to get to a point now that now this is for international standards, VIP, you name it. All of this is done locally. So we have different designs done. That's what's important about it. And then, so you have your messaging and attribution. It's very important to not lose it. You can have something, if you don't attribute it, somebody else will take it. Next thing they'll tell you it's from another country.
Oh, yeah.
So this is about wildlife. We have the wildlife here. But then again, how about this?
Made in Uganda, with a lot of African history.
Exactly. So this is another creative way of showing the map without like having to put the flags, but you show the diversity of what the continent has. So you're promoting the African heritage in a way, even the way you do the words and the color. We're a colorful continent, almost the nation. So we have the welcome to Uganda.
Wow.
You see? And what I love about this is, you may recall, I really believe in the Pan-African values and linking it to the international standards, and that is why if you turn it around, Ubuntu Mulam. But if you look at the quality of how it is, can you tell the difference? It's because of the presentation. So why would you present what is local to look different? So these are the things that we do. So. And then, so we walk in here. So presentation is important also for conferences and for everything. So while we organize the store and I talk to my staff, we learn to discuss how do you organize things during an event. So saying you're having a business conference, in a corner, you can still have things that you're selling.
Yes.
So when people are coming in, when they're tired of sitting, they stand and they go, what do they see? What do they get? Is it easy for them to access it, to have a look and see what they want to do? Or not. So the way you display things, the way you make them available. So for example, you see here, we put the youth course, we put sports. You know, somebody's going to see Roma, Real Madrid and go like, hey, okay, let me focus there. And then they will come back. And now here we have our Ugandan flag. We have the things here because we want people to take things up patriotic. We have some of the bags on, locally, and then the t-shirt again. So it goes, we have water bottles from the soccer academy that I support. So you mix and match. So we're heading in that direction. But for now, we display their stuff here. They display ours somewhere else. So it's all intermingled. And then, for example, I wanted to highlight this. For example, this is done also by one of the young women that we showcase at the Source of the Nile Expo for Women Agribusiness. So she did it like this, right? Vanity case. What did we do at TAC? We put things in it. So you're traveling and you're running, what do you need? A little bit of cream, a little bit of this. So you put it in and we've added value to it. And already we had several of them. They're all gone. And people are like, oh my God, I loved it. It's African value addition.
After 3 decades of service at the United Nations, she decides to come down to Uganda. She has served almost in every United Nations agencies in several countries, from Ivory Coast to Nigeria to United Nations New York and other places. My guest today is Her Excellency Rosa Malango, the former United Nations head here in Uganda, and she has been the director of commissions at the United Nations for Americas, Asia, and Africa. Your Excellency, welcome to Senior Citizens Talk of HICGI News Agency.
Thank you very much.
In May 2021, when you were in Gulu at the foundation of an American actor, Forrest Whitaker, you said Uganda is my homeland. Please tell us, is Uganda your homeland, and what do you see about Uganda, of all nations that you've been to?
Well, first of all, thank you and congratulations for your work. I've been following it for a couple of years now, so it's good to be here. I believe that when I made that statement, it was because number one, I felt a connection with the country, with its people. Number two, I saw incredible opportunities. But three, and most importantly, because I was really sincerely welcomed, both professionally, personally, and my family was as well. I've always worked with my heart, no matter which country or continent I served. I've always tried to understand and embrace local indigenous knowledge and the culture. And somehow in Uganda it was pretty easy to do. So when I thought about a place to settle with my family, where there would be fantastic weather, access to organic food,
Organic food.
and great business opportunities, Uganda definitely came to mind.
In these 3 decades, you have seen Kofi Annan, former Secretary General, you've seen Ban Ki-moon, Antonio Guterres. Can you weigh to us how the performance of each of those Secretary Generals of the United Nations where you're working under them?
Oh my God, I cannot access my bosses at all. What I can say is that I learned something special from each one of them. Under late Kofi Annan, when he served, I was a junior officer. But he was one of the first who showed me how to empower younger people. So despite being very young, he assigned me to be a special assistant and a spokesperson to a lot of the Secretary General's special envoys. So that is how a lot of my special assignments began under Kofi Annan. I served with a special envoy for the Horn of Africa drought back at the time. I went to Mozambique the same way. I worked in support of my late boss at the time, Under Secretary General Sergio Vieira de Mello, on his special assignments, whether it was Iraq, whether it was Kosovo, whether it was Western Sahara. So I started learning about special assignments and how to engage with heads of states from the international level under Kofi Annan. So he gave me that opportunity, for which I will be eternally grateful. Under Ban Ki-moon, I moved into the leadership level, and what I recall from Ban Ki-moon very clearly is that he pushed for diversified leadership. It was under Ban Ki-moon that the new rules came out that in order to have a list of people who could serve as his representatives, he wanted women and he wanted people from the global south. So we were having an issue until then that most of the representatives were male and from the north. Ban Ki-moon changed that. And so I was able to become a representative thanks to Ban Ki-moon. And I'll always be grateful for him for that level of trust, and that he was able to entrust me to serve in Uganda. Definitely will be something that I will always cherish. And I recall from Ban Ki-moon, he always told us to find the balance between indigenous knowledge and international values. So I got that from him. And I recall that when I first came, so that's when I started looking at what are the cultural values, what are the kingdoms, what's happening, where can we find common ground? And we found common ground by linking Ubuntu Munamu with SDGs. So to Ban Ki-moon, embracing indigenous knowledge, bringing them up, that sense of local equals global is definitely something that I learned from him, and I'll be eternally grateful to him for that. My boss, former boss now, Antonio Guterres, I had worked across from him when he was High Commissioner for Refugees. At that time, I was Director for Partnerships under Secretary General Valerie Amos. She was the first woman from the UK to serve as head at the time. And Antonio, he was very much focused on the inequalities in our system and how we can find solutions to them. So under him, I focused a lot on how do we make sure that Ugandan voice was part of that discussion. So making sure that Uganda was part of the World Humanitarian Summit. If we're going to redefine the Refugee Pact, which became the Comprehensive Refugee Response Framework, how to make sure the Uganda experience was a baseline, an example for that. We knew that the president was talking a lot about wetlands at that time. And then we started talking within the UN about green industrialization and agro-industrialization, inclusive growth. So how can we make sure that that translates into an example at the world level? So bringing that voice of the Global South into UN policy making was something that we did. And I was also grateful to him that once I ended my service in Uganda, he had appointed me as the director of the Regional Commission's office in New York, overseeing all the regional economic commissions of the world and making that linkages on what are the trends, what are the issues, and how do we make sure that the UN policy making reflects that.
Oftentimes, when people are aspiring, everyone wants to be working with the United Nations because of so many privileges that come with the United Nations. And it was surprising that you decided to resign from a very high-profile career at the United Nations. Why did you resign?
Well, I think that, first of all, it's very important to put this in context. One, I've been known for a long time as a UN child. I'm one of the few people who actually did my whole career in the UN. Many people come in from political and then go. I did my whole career studying as humanitarian development, peacekeeping, all the way to political representation. So that is a privilege that I have. But I don't think that people speak enough about the cost of being international civil servants. You're almost never with your family. You miss a lot of things. You're constantly in different places. It's difficult to set a route because you are not there. So it was a miracle for me to be a mother and still an international civil servant, because you have to try to balance things out, and you pay a price for it. You pay a price for it. Your family pays a price for it. Your kids pay a price for it. So privileges, I would say rights and responsibilities, because you pay a price. There's a price for the service. Now, when I was in middle management, I think now almost 20 years ago, my father was unwell and I was on assignment, and I continued to be on an assignment, and then one day I got the call, he was gone. So I missed being with my father because I was serving humanity. So when about a year and a half ago, my brother started communicating to me about my mother's challenges, I monitored the situation, and last year I told the Deputy Secretary General there is no way I'm going to repeat the same mistake that I did when I lost my father. My mom's situation was fragile. My first son was also having a lot of health issues. And I said I would not forgive myself if we lost my mother because I was serving the world. So I said, it's almost 30 years. I need to say thank you very much, call it quits and move on. I'm sure I can find another way to take care of us, but I needed to focus on my mom, not my kids, full time. I could not do that and do the job full time. So that is how I resigned and relocated my family here once my mom's health situation had stabilized a little bit, and I'm delighted to say that she has improved so much. While she's here, she still requires care, but it's a definitely different prognosis. And even my son has improved significantly, and he's now studying at university and playing soccer in Spain. So I put family first.
So during your tour of duty while you're in Uganda as head of United Nations, those ones who applaud you for bringing the United Nations so close to the people in Uganda, how justifiable is that?
Well, the thing is, I believe that every time you have a job, it's up to you to decide how you want to do it. you can have a responsibility and do the job literally, what it says, and or you can say, I'm going to do this job not as a job, but as a mission. And you focus on how can you empower the people once you're gone. And I think that the second one is what I focused on, because I was one of several representatives. There's always going to be a representative. The UN has been here, what, 60 years? God willing, it'll be like another 200 years. But when I was here, what did I do? And I'm a firm believer that the UN actually belongs to everyone. But I don't think we always show it in the way we do business. So I was always brainstorming with my colleagues from different agencies and with my team about what are those initiatives that we can do that make it easier for the people to grasp that they are the UN and to recognize them for that. So, for example, we did the 1 million solutions, where any youth, as long as you're doing something to empower your community, we figured out which SDG linked. You got the visibility. Then suddenly you could get a contract with a development partner or with the government or something, just because we gave you the visibility to be able to do that. We translated the SDGs into local languages. And when we did, people said, but I'm doing this SDG. And we said, exactly. But they wouldn't know if you hadn't translated it. So then that allowed Uganda to be able to showcase at the General Assembly how SDGs are being done by everyone. SDG is not done by government, it's done by the nation. So, but you had to unpack it for people to be able to relate to it and do it. So by doing that, you move a little bit backwards, you let the people be in front, but guess what? It continues. You give it a life of its own.
Okay, you and President Museveni, when you were the UN boss here, you began a campaign called Solidarity with Refugees, and you rallied so many nations to come and support the refugees. Is there something that you have inside of you that ties you to the refugees?
Yes, personal experience. My parents were part of the independence movement of my native Equatorial Guinea. And unfortunately, after the first president, there was a persecution of intellectuals. So in my first year of life, I went from being a diplomatic baby to being a refugee toddler. And I remember the pain and the storytelling from my parents for most of my life of that. So we grew up, my brothers and I, without knowing who our family were, because, we were asylum seekers. So I know the pain, I know what it means, and I know what it means when you are welcomed somewhere and you're embraced. My late father was invited by Samora Machel to come and serve in Mozambique, and I remember that was my first, awakening of being on African territory, and we were embraced in Mozambique, and nobody looked at the fact that these are some asylum seekers here. And so coming to Uganda and discovering that Uganda had this incredible, unique approach where host communities cohabitate with the refugees, where refugees are encouraged to farm, where refugees have access to education and health, it was a story that needed to be told. And I was coming from headquarters where we were struggling with so many countries even to just admit refugees. So I really thought that we had an opportunity to showcase the Ugandan model of refugee hosting, which was based on Ubuntu. It was based on Ubuntu. It's my brothers are here. We were refugees before. Now we are hosting you. So the approach is different. And I thought that solidarity approach needed to be showcased. So really, when we worked on the summit, it was about repositioning Uganda because of its traditions, because of its approach, as an example of solidarity. And I'm very happy that that branding stayed, about Uganda and its refugee hosting approach.
So those values that you have stood for, and some of them are the local languages, could you tell us why you chose those special values, Ubuntu Bulamu, Oberufu? You have some those values you talk about.
Because those are our foundation. I think it's amazing when I would sit through and listen to the sessions of the different kingdoms and chiefdoms, because they had a couple of sessions analyzing the commonalities between Ubuntu Mlamu and the SDGs. And I remember they identified as many as 70 values, 70, that you could find. And they're followed by the Acholi, followed by the Banyora, followed by the Bunyoro, followed by Buganda, that we could link back to the SDGs. So then you start thinking, right? And then, of course, I would speak to my mother, and she said, oh, yes, we have some of these similar ones also in Central Africa as well. And I remember from my time in Cote d'Ivoire, we have them. I served in Guatemala, and it's all the way in Latin America, and it's amazing. Some of the values are still there. And they're from the time of the transatlantic slave, so they're there. So then the question becomes, if we want to develop, if we want to innovate, what is our foundation? You must have a foundation that is yours upon which you can innovate. And I realized that the Ubuntu Mnamo values are our foundation. They talk about what? Hard work, honesty, respect of the environment, caring for the vulnerable, cleanliness. This is it. So if we can embrace our foundation, then we can innovate. Then we can modernize. And then we can do business without having to humiliate somebody else. Who said that because we are competing means humiliation? It's not written anywhere. We can compete and be civilized. We can do business without destroying the environment. That is our foundation. And in our foundation, if you lift yourself, you lift your community. So that is why I love the Ubuntu Mnamo so much, and I try to make sure that even now that I'm doing business, I'm trying to show you can do business with empathy. You can do business and have young people around you. And they learn and they work, and you respect them and respect their contribution, and you can generate income. You can generate revenue. You can open doors for women entrepreneurs and youth entrepreneurs, and you don't lose a thing. You actually gain, because you become a bridge, an enabler for others. And we elevate the community of business in Uganda. So that is what I'm standing upon as we push for innovation and technology transfer and all these other things.
Your Excellency, Uganda was almost losing the UN base. Right? The United Nations is in hold of the entire region of Africa, covering Somalia, South Sudan, Central Africa, Congo, and the entire. But we're almost losing the base. And President Museveni actually had made a protest later about that. And was that something magical that you did to retain the UN base here?
Well, first of all, that's my past life. So if you want to discuss with that, I suggest you go and speak with the Uganda Permanent Representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Adonia Ayebare. He can give you all the details of all the work we did. But as the head of the UN at the time, we did support His Excellency the Ambassador in conveying Uganda's views, and we're excited that the capacity was there, was kept. But more importantly, I think that it will be interesting to have a reflection on what is Uganda's profile nowadays. Uganda for a while was known as the peacekeeper of the region, and that partly influenced the kind of footprint not just the UN but several international partners had. Now Uganda is moving towards having a more dynamic role in terms of the what do you call it, the political economy of the region. So it'll be interesting to see what does that mean. So what kind of value chains are we talking about, and with whom? I have witnessed an East Africa that was what, 4 or 5 countries. Now it's 7 or 8, I believe. So what does that mean? Because before, Somalia was not part of this, DRC was not part of that. That has significant implications for Uganda. So what kind of factories do they need to have? What kind of technology needs to be done from here? What kind of logistical positioning does Uganda need to have so that it can benefit from this much larger and more ambitious East Africa community? And are there any plans for East Africa to engage as a trading partner with ECOWAS, with West Africa, because we have some giants on the other side as well. You have Nigeria on the other side. You have Senegal on the other side. You have Ghana on the other side. Cote d'Ivoire on the other side. All of those ones also trying to become manufacturing giants in their own standing. So what is the profile that Uganda is going to develop that allow it to be a critical now economic hub for Africa?
There is a UN agency on human rights which lost its presence in the country, and it was disappointing to Geneva and the rest of the countries who believe in human rights. Would you have done something to retain the UN agency on human rights?
I don't engage on if or woulda, coulda. If something happens, there was a UN head at the time. I encourage you to ask the UN head at the time on what their actions were.
Okay, Your Excellency, TAC, now coming to TAC, you are requested to be the board chair of TAC. Tell us what TAC is about and what are you doing with this beautiful organization?
Well, first of all, I love the meaning. You know, Tumaini is hope. I think that I'm always attracted to what does it represent. So, Tumaini African Knowledge Center, so hope for knowledge in Africa, it's something that definitely appealed to me. So when this group of young people wrote to me and said, we understand that you've left and you're looking at, could you kindly consider being the chair and be an executive chair and help us to take this to another level, I definitely saw the potential of TAC becoming a problem solver. That it could be, and by becoming a problem solver, demonstrating once again that young people can be part of the solution. So the Tumaini African Knowledge Center, it basically has three big functions. One is to promote Uganda as an investment destination for high net worth individuals who are willing to bring value chains into the country. And so since my arrival, I've helped the team to focus on that, fine tune that. We are focusing on 3 high net worth partners right now. As it's not the number of quantity, it's the quality. We do risk assessments for them. We've helped them to register in the country. We help them to make sure they meet the right people. We identify partners for them. And then we link them to the National Development Plan so that whatever they're doing actually helps to implement the national vision. So that's an important part of our work. It takes a lot of energy, but we hope that the clients that we engage will become ambassadors for Uganda and their respective areas. The second part of it is another gap that I used to see. So many times these investors come, they set up these value chains, set up these companies, but then they don't link to the small and medium enterprises who can become part of their value chain. So then we have been working with the small and medium enterprises, which are mostly led by women and youth, and helping them to profile themselves, helping them to present themselves, helping them to showcase themselves, and helping them to brief these investors when they come into the country to do feasibility studies so that they can become part of the value chain. And within this, we worked with UN Women and the Ministry of Agriculture and Gender recently to have the Source of the Nile Women Agribusiness side event on the margins of NAM. And I want to thank His Excellency the President for encouraging us to proceed. And imagine we had as many as 100 women identified, 50 came to showcase what they're doing. And as TAC, we're going to be focusing on helping 5 find the right partnerships to continue to grow. So what does that mean, helping them to grow? It's making sure they're in our publications, improving their investment profile, and making sure they attend networking activities. So we are launching on Friday, February 2nd, the TAC Market Day. And the idea is that through this market day, to be able to have women and youth entrepreneurs sell their items, network, learn from each other, but also connect to potential policymakers and investors. So that's the second part of getting the women and the youth into the export value chain for Uganda as the economy continues to grow. Then the third part of our work comes back to the mindset change in Ubuntu Mulamo
Yes.
and income generation, and that's the tax store. So for the tax store, we have a lot of items that we produce locally with our youth and women. They're all about messaging. So what are the positive messages about the country, about the region, so that if somebody takes the bag or takes a T-shirt overseas, it's a very good quality. It's a clear messaging, and they may want to give it as a gift, or they may want to purchase some more. And so we elevate and showcase the creative ability of our partners in that. And so the storage there, it generates revenue, it helps us pay our bills, and we can do it for high level events and special occasions. And then I think that there's a special side of TAC which I brought to TAC when I accepted to serve as the chair, which is the TAC Foundation. And I created the foundation because I believe you have to give back. So while everything else I spoke to you about is for profit, and we are registered and we got our trading license and all of that, the non-profit is under the foundation. So you have to give back to the community. So as TAC, we have identified three institutions that we will be helping every year. One is Sanyu Babies Home, the second is the Masulita Center for Street Children, and the third is the Mbale School of the Deaf. So for those three institutions, we will try to make sure that throughout the year, at least twice a year, we make a donation to help the institutions and the children survive.
And I've seen you've donated a bus to the School of the Deaf in Valley. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yes, I'm particularly excited about the bus to restart TAC and do all of this. This is my UN pension at work, so I hope I get my return on investment soon enough. But there was a discussion about giving a bus to the school way back when, and then I was sad to return several years later to find out that that had not been done. So I figured, let me do it. And I'm hoping that by making the donation of the bus with the Ubuntu Mulamo values and SDG values around it, that other Africans and Ugandans in the middle class will also do the same. I mean, imagine if each one of us who's in the middle class and in the private sector, if we gave one bus per school year.
And on the sidelines of the Nine Line movement recently in Kampala, we saw Attack also displaying craft and more items for sale. I mean, what spirit are you doing that?
So always dual spirit. Number one, to demonstrate that Ugandan youth and Ugandan women can produce high quality items that anybody will be happy to take back to their home country. So that was the main purpose. So we did a kind of mini market day, and we're really excited that some of the delegates came and got things, and the women made money. They made money, and the guests were so excited with the creativity and the quality of what they found. So number one for me is always, yes, we can. We can make things that are good enough for any international conference here in Uganda. We can do it. We just need to be given the opportunity to do so. So one of my dreams is that at some point we may be invited by the government to do this for high-level events, and that we may be invited by some schools to do it. Because why are our uniforms not reflecting our values? So we can do T-shirts and uniforms that have the Ubuntu Mlambo values for Ugandan schools. How many schools are there? So I'm hoping that by showcasing, that is what it will definitely do.
Touching the lives of women and the youth. You founded the Youth Coalition for Sustainable Development Goals that brings together several organizations, and you've opened opportunities for the youth. And of course, there's some achievements about the youth. Are you happy about how the coalition is performing and its goals as a founder?
Well, I'm a big believer in teams to be able to get things across, and I think that is why when we started a discussion about what would be the capabilities that Uganda needed to continue to tell its story on SDGs, we came up with the need for the SDG Secretariat, which I'm super excited to see all the work that it's doing now and how it's grown. And second was the SDG Coalition for the Youth. which we helped them to register as an NGO because we thought they need to have a permanent fora from which they could contribute to telling the story of Uganda and the sustainable development goals. So, and I've seen some of them now are now entrepreneurs and are doing their things. That's the whole point. It was the point to have a coalition that was open to everyone, as long as you're a youth in Uganda, helping to improve the lives in a community. You never know which story can inspire what or what it can lead to. So I'm super excited to see that. And now that I'm in the private sector, I'm trying to do something similar, but now focusing with youth entrepreneurs. So the youth who are working with me in TAC, and it's a small team, are all entrepreneurs in their own right. And I keep telling them that as they work with TAC, I expect them to also build their own enterprises. The idea, the dream, is that 10 years from now, TAC would be one of the top 10 taxpayers in Uganda. It would be a TAC group, and that the members of the group will be companies led by young entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs.
As a Pan-African, we were seeing the Africa trade zone. Is it a myth or it's a reality? We're not feeling the opportunities.
Whether something is a myth or reality is a personal decision. All the governments and institutions can do is create the frameworks. So, if I recall correctly, Uganda was one of the founding members of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. They promoted it because the president believes in markets. So he always talks first about the regional market and Africa as a market to be able to leverage better when we're talking to other markets. And we're talking about the projection in terms of population and manufacturing and production. So the leaders have done it. Now it's up to us. So as private sector, what are we doing to test those policies, to see what is working, to give feedback to the decision makers so they can adjust them accordingly? What is being done to improve the trading within COMESA, which is Southern Africa and East Africa? What is being done to improve between East Africa and West Africa? So we have the framework. I know that the Secretariat is doing a lot of trainings, especially for youth entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs, and there's policy discussions. But as private sector, what are the concrete steps that we need to make this a reality? Because personally, I can't wait to the day when I see Africa as a team negotiating with Turkey, Africa as a team negotiating with Italy, Africa as a team negotiating with China. Then the market barriers will be a completely different conversation. But we need to build the blocks to that. You can't talk about a continental Africa if even our own national export value chain is not inclusive. So as TAC, our tiny contribution is to make sure that the day Uganda meets its goals in terms of export, it includes also women and youth entrepreneurs. So we leave no one behind. Then if we have an inclusive value chain, Uganda, DRC, Tanzania, Kenya, the whole East Africa, then now you look and see who else can join us. Can Nigeria join us in this? Can Ghana join us in this? Now imagine 20 African countries going to negotiate with China. What would that deal look like? There you go. Now that will be implementation of the African Continental Free Zone.
As we're here to finish our Syrian Citizens Talk, I would like to ask you, I've never seen you in a suit. Why?
What do you mean by suits?
I mean, you are in Chitenji African wear, and that's why even at the UN or all meetings, you are like that.
Yes, because I embrace my heritage. I mean, for those of us who have been raised overseas, you have two options. One option is that you adopt 100% the culture where you are. And the second one is that you remain a hybrid. You embrace your culture of origin and then adopt parts of the culture of where you are. And I believe I'm of the second iteration. I'm the generation that we call ourselves global citizens. I fiercely proud of being African-born citizen, even though raised all over the world. And as an African citizen, where else were reflected more than in my clothing? And I'm also hoping that whenever I wear something and I put it out there, I'm actually promoting someone. I have young women in Luboa who sew for me all the time, and I have some women downtown who get me stuff. So if I can wear what they can make, hopefully they'll get more clients. So if we don't promote our own, then who will? So I know there was some issues, some sensitivities that some of my colleagues had at the beginning, especially at the headquarters when why are you wearing that? I'm like, this is who I am. What's the problem? So we have to embrace our roots and our heritage if we want to grow. So I have had no issue embracing my heritage, and that is why I consider myself a Pan-African. I would wear things from different parts of Africa when I was in New York. All the time, I still do the same. Now it's my heritage. It was made for this climate. It was made for me. We are from a continent with colors and designs and with things that flow. So why would I not wear my heritage? So I embrace my heritage, and I firmly believe in innovation, and I believe in inclusion, and I believe in mutual respect of human beings.
Is there anything that you would like to tell the world as we conclude?
I guess what I would like to say is there was a time a few years ago people used to talk about Africa rising,
Yes.
right? And I believe that if Africa is to successfully rise, we all need to contribute to it. And to all of Africa's children around the world, come home. I believe that part of why I've come home is to be able to walk the talk. For years, those of us in the diaspora have talked about going back and settling. Well, I've come back, I'm settling, I'm working, I'm hustling, so please support my hustle. And I'm making a living, and I have a good quality of life for me, for my kids, for my mom. It can be done. So if we don't come back to lift Africa, who on earth are we expecting is going to come and do it? So an appeal for everyone to come back. Let's try to make it happen. It's not easy, but it's not easy anywhere. Every country, every continent has its challenges. Let's come and help Africa to rise in a way that's dignified and sustainable.
Let's come back and help Africa. It's been a pleasure hosting Her Excellency Rosa Malango, from United Nations, a country representative to Uganda and Director Commissions at the United Nations based in New York, who's here in Uganda just like you've had. Until next time on a Senior Citizens Talk of HICGI News Agency, my name is Kivumbi Earnest Benjamin.